Now, in our first story, the police administration is warning it will not entertain any breach of the peace as it prepares to deploy more than 62,000 fully armed police officers across the country for the next month's presidential and parliamentary election. That's a stern warning from the Inspector General of Police, James Opong-Bueno, who has been addressing a news conference on the readiness of the Election Security Task Force ahead of the polls.
The media in all the regions. These engagements will continue until the electoral process has come to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, we count on you to help in this endeavor. On the election day itself, that's the 7th December 2020, and the period before declaration of results by the Electoral Commission, we will operate centers which we call the Joint Operation Centers, or the JoyNews, at the national, regional, and district level. These are situation rooms which will have monitoring teams. Ladies and gentlemen, as we have done in the past, some civil society groups will be allowed space at the JoyNews to work with us in monitoring and clarifying issues. As election day approaches, we will put our channels for verification of security information. Media practitioners, commentators, and bloggers are expected to verify and validate information from such channels before disseminating them. This is to avoid unnecessary tension that may spark from misinformation.
So that was the IGP James Opong-Bueno addressing the media earlier today in Accra on the police's election security task force readiness for the December polls. Head of our security desk, Gifty Andopia, has just returned from that press conference. He joins me in studio. So more than 52,000 security personnel to be deployed across the country in December. Yeah. What's the strategy? Well, specifically, we're looking at 52,794. Let me go through that again. 52,794 officers to be deployed. And this is within the context of police saying it has identified 6,128 hotspots or flashpoints across the country. I think previously there was a figure that was put up that was a little about 4,000. But right now, from the IGP himself, we're looking at 6,128 flashpoints. And within this context, we are releasing these men out there. Now, these men who will be deployed will be having special armbands. We're told that the special armbands is supposed to identify them, make it easy for the public to identify the officers who have been deployed to deal with election. Right. We know what happened in Ayawaso West Wuogon. The police doesn't want a repetition. So they say that armband will have details of how it looks like so you can identify them on election day. They're also talking about the fact that the public are allowed to, you have the right to ask for identification if anybody puts himself up as a security personnel. Exactly, on that day, you have the right to ask those questions. Right. The BNI and the CID, by the way, will not be uniformed. All the men who will be deployed will be in their official uniform with the armbands, but the CID and the BNI officials will not be uniformed. And then there will be standby guards, or what the IGP calls the standby guards, who will be deployed to support from the Ghana Armed Forces. So it's not just the police, the Ghana Armed Forces. And although they say that they're so just to clarify, the standby guards are from the military. Is that the case?
Not necessarily the military. The military. So in every operation, you need to have a clear leader. Okay. And in this operation, this is a civil operation. It is led by the police because the police are supposed to deal with everything civil. Right. But you do that with support from the Ghana Armed Forces. Okay. And sometimes you have them stationed at their bases and they're called in. Okay. It looks to me like from what the IGP is saying, these people will be embedded with the police officers. Okay. But of course, the police officers will be the leaders in terms of operational decisions, etc. Right. They will have the support from personnel from the Ghana Armed Forces. Right. So apart from that, they're saying that although they'll be focused on the hotspot to prevent some of the things that we've seen happen, electoral violence and all, they have learned from the registration. Lessons learned from the registration indicates that there are places you would take for granted and say they have not been identified as flashpoints. But those are the places that you actually have electoral violence cases. Right. So they're saying that there won't be any single polling station without an armed officer. So every polling station across the country will have at least one
armed officer. Let me wrap up with this one. The fact that police says they've realized that people usually, or history shows that people usually go, ballot snatchers, for example, would go ahead with the operations by using motorbikes. One thing that they, and this was not, I need to make this clear, was not part of the plan that the police communicated to us before we asked our questions. This was in response to a question asked by a reporter from Oman FM. The police, the IGP said motorbikes will not be allowed more than 100 meters away from the police stations. Yeah, and that's something we can ask them for more. And they're hoping to respond in terms of distress calls within at least 15 minutes. The issue has been raised that, look, police numbers, when you call the police numbers, you get very funny answers. Sometimes nobody picks up at all. They're saying that they will communicate channels through which people can, you know, phone into the police if you witness any electoral violence or any anything, you know, electoral any electoral issues that you may witness.
All right. Now, there have been attacks on MPs and parliamentary candidates in the recent past. Did the police say what they were doing about this, you know, in terms of protecting these candidates?
So they didn't give us details about protecting specific candidates, but we did ask them about electoral violence and how they have responded to these electoral violence. They said they gave us, what they gave us were figures. They didn't speak to, I think there was this specific case that was of interest to all the media organizations, the Hawa Kumsin case, for example, that they said this member of parliament went out there and admitted to firing gunshots. What has happened to that particular case? They didn't give us any specifics. What they told us was that a number of people have been arrested. They said that there is a task force that was put together in 2012, and that task force has been operating since. So they were referred, they had these cases that were recorded during the registration, referred to them. Out of that, they gave us the statistics to the effect that about 204 electoral offenses were recorded. Out of that 204, they were able to arrest 310 people. And out of these 310 people that they arrested, 120 are currently under investigation. There are some of the cases that the people themselves have decided to withdraw. There are some that the people have decided to settle it among themselves. And the police say if it is a misdemeanor, they let it go. Because they already don't have the time, the resources, so they let it go. But they said that about at least 10 convictions, they've been able to secure at least 10 convictions. There have been 2 acquittances, and then there have been 7 no-shows. So the cases essentially have been trashed out. But they did not give us the specifics, which many people are interested in.
I guess a question on the lips of many is what has happened to the case involving the MP for Ewutu, was it Hawa?
Fantiman.
No, Hawa Kumsin.
Hawa Kumsin.
The shooting incident in Kaswa.
Yes.
A lot of people have been asking questions about that. What's the status of the investigation?
That's what I was responding to when I said that they refused to give us any specific answers. In fact, what the IGP did was to bring in the heads of the different departments that exist within the police service to have them answer specific questions that may come up. So you have the CID, the Director General of the CID, who was there, and the IGP called him in to answer. The CID, Director General CID, to be fair to him, by the way, has asked me to reach out later for us to get the details. But he gave us, you know, general. He just told us that some of these cases, and in fact, the IGP came on the back of that and said Ghanaians deserve thorough investigation. And so, if you go to court without the requisite evidence that can pin the people down, even if they did anything wrong, the case will be essentially thrashed out. So what you want to do is to take your time and do the investigations. But of course, the point was made to them from the media that some of these things, it takes too long. All the police will say is that we're investigating. At the end of the day, it hurts public confidence in the police. So we didn't get the details. But of course, we'll be reaching out to the CID for more of these details.
All right, and finally, Gifty, I mean, this year's elections is different because obviously we are in a COVID era and we have to be observing the safety protocols. So in that regard, what is the police doing differently as they deploy men on the ground?
Well, they haven't said anything different from what we know, which is that you'll have to wear your mask. When you get there, there will be stands for you to wash your hands. You have to use their what's it called? The sanitizer.
Veronica bucket.
Veronica bucket, the sanitizer, and then you have to, you know, maintain the. But I mean, there have been a lot. If you look around, it looks as if people feel like it's gone down a bit. You know, we're not dying as in other countries. So
they're saying they will ensure that those safety protocols are
exactly. It was part of his initial address, which means that it's something of importance to the police. We can listen to him.
We are not forgetting COVID-19. and we have factored enforcement of the presidential protocols in our plans. Security personnel were forced mask wearing and social distancing at polling stations. We also expect all voters to wash their hands with equipment that will be provided by the Electoral Commission at all the polling stations before they present themselves to vote. Ladies and gentlemen, come December 7, 2020, the global lenses will be focused on Ghana to evaluate the potency of our democratic task force. I pledge the unwavering commitment of the peace, of the police and security services to make Ghana a country of peace. We are working tirelessly polling stations will be policed by uniformed personnel in regular uniforms. The support of the Ghana Armed Forces will be in the form of patrols and rapid response to curtail incidents of crime, including violent crime, vigilantism, and terrorism that could spring up before, during, or after the elections. Any person or group of persons who plan to cause trouble or disturbance in any part of the country should think twice, because they will be arrested and prosecuted. Interpret provocative, insulting language and such expressions in our media space violate the laws. We therefore urge journalists, bloggers, and media commentators.
So you heard the IGP, James Opong Bueno. Gifty is still in the studio with me. So Gifty, I mean, obviously the political parties are major stakeholders in this process. Has this plan been shared with them?
Well, as to the specifics of this plan and whether it is what has been communicated, I can't tell. But the IGP indicates that in the same hall that we had that press conference today, they have called the leaders of the political parties. They have called the traditional leaders. They've called the clergy or religious leaders into that same hall, and they've tried to talk to them about maintaining the peace. So the details of what they discussed with them could be the same, could be different.
Right.
And he said that they got them to commit to ensuring that they call their people to order. And he actually mentioned that, and hopefully get them, you know, get them whipped into line. All
right, thank you so much. That's Gifty. She's head of our security desk here at Joy News. You're still here on Election Brief with me, Arabakum.